Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over my 2021 fantasy draft do's and don'ts. If you enjoy the content, please smash that like button and subscribe. The first thing you want to do is know your league. Are you in a money league or maybe just a league for fun? These things matter in terms of preparation for a draft. A league where everybody is new to fantasy and may not know how it works is more susceptible to a more random draft. A money league where everyone is competing at the highest level to win will stay more on pace with ADP. Again, ADP is average draft position, and if you visit the fantasyfootballadvice.com website, you can find the average draft position of every player on every platform, from ESPN to Yahoo. Adding on to knowing your league, if you know your league mates value quarterback a lot more and will grab them early, make sure you keep that in mind going in. This can give you an opportunity to grab that wide receiver or running back who doesn't normally fall in the draft. But this can also cause you to miss out on the quarterback that you want. So again, know your league. What you don't want to do is draft your favorite players from your favorite team. Let's say you're a Dolphins fan and you're going in wanting to draft Will Fuller, Jalen Waddle, and Myles Gaskin. This is not going to be a good tactic for you to have a good fantasy team. First, you'll probably end up reaching for these players to ensure they're on your team, which definitely isn't good, considering their ADP is already pretty high, and you're drafting from one offense, so your team is extremely limited in terms of upside. On top of that, there's a good chance your league mates know you're a Dolphins fan and take all of your players because, well, that's just the nature of fantasy football. The next thing you want to do is research and see where you should be drafting certain players. If you really want to go above and beyond, create a tiers list of players at each position. Doing this will put you a huge leg ahead of the rest of your league mates because just doing research is usually more than the average fantasy football player. But first, there are so many free tools out there that you can use to improve your fantasy knowledge on the internet. The tool that I would recommend most is the Fantasy Pros ECR Rankings, which stands for Expert Consensus Rankings. This pretty much takes every fantasy football expert, for the most part, and averages out their rankings and gives you an average of all of them. So this is really a useful tool, and you can't really find anything as accurate as these ECR rankings, so you can find that on the Fantasy Pros website. I would also recommend doing multiple mock drafts on there because when you finish, they actually give you a grade and tell you if, your team is any good. So I would highly recommend doing your mock drafts there and definitely take a look at the ECR. And when it comes to tiers, a tiers list is just your rankings but split into groupings of players. So for example, in my tier 1 running backs list, I have Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, and Zeke. But then to start my second tier, I have Saquon Barkley. So pretty much if I have the 6th pick in a draft and McCaffrey, Cook, Henry, Kamara, and Zeke are off the board, once I get to Barkley, I start to consider other options like Travis Kelce in the draft. Don't take a quarterback with your first 3 picks. Usually I would just say don't take quarterback early, but there's some value in the middle rounds of the draft this year, and quarterback is extremely talented. If you can grab a guy who can both run and pass, it's going to benefit your team greatly, and you're going to more than likely have a top 5 quarterback. You have Kyler, Dak, and Lamar all going in the 5th round or later, and Mahomes and Allen could be a good value if you see them there after the 4th round, but I'm not going to use my first 3 round picks on a quarterback. You have Tannehill and Brady also going in the 10th. Now these are guys that rushing ability can be limited, but Tom Brady can easily go for 40 touchdowns this year, and he can easily be had on your fantasy roster. The next thing you want to do in your 2021 fantasy draft is draft for upside with your late round picks. Round 8 and later, you are drafting for the bench of your team, so draft players that you can see coming out of their current situation as a guy who can make his way into your starting lineup, A perfect example of this is Corey Davis, who is a player that's the number one wide receiver on his roster that you can get in the later rounds. Not only is he a number one wide receiver, providing a safe floor, but he has pretty good upside with mediocre talent around him and a nice contract to back him up from this past season. I tend to stay away from the running back handcuffs in this area and seasoned veterans in this range of the draft. The later rounds really give you an opportunity to see if guys will pan out. I don't like to have guys sitting on my roster for too long, so I also like to draft guys who you can find out quickly if they're going to make an impact for your fantasy team or not. An example of this would be Henry Ruggs. It's going to be his second year in the league, so it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to become an option for the Raiders, and you can quickly see that within the first 3 weeks. After that, I'll be happy dropping him, so I'm going to recommend drafting players that you'll know what you get early so that you can drop them for other players that are valuable on the waiver wire. Don't wait on a player you feel strongly about. If you see the player you want and you are unsure if he's going to make it back to you at the next pick, he most likely won't. So go with your gut feeling and take the player you want with your initial gut feeling. The draft is all about knowing your league and who they will draft, so you know what to do in situations that you're unsure, like this one. But don't wait on a player just because you want to get a better value on them coming around the next round, because more than likely they won't be coming back to you. Make sure you go with the players you want, draft them in reasonable positions, and really you can't mess up your draft. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thanks to everybody for listening, and if you have yet to subscribe, please do by clicking down below. See ya!